Hey everyone, welcome back to Obscure Undead. Sorry for the long hiatus. I think it's been about 5 or 6 weeks or so. I had an unexpected death in my family that I had to go take care of, and then a couple of other things happened in the meantime. Between the beginning of our hiatus and now, my band released its album, or my band broke up. I started taking antidepressants. It's been a lot, and we're 6-7 weeks into 2022. But anyway, I'm getting back into the swing of things. You might have noticed it is just me today, and I'm going to be trying to do this a bit more often because it works better with everyone's schedules for me to record a couple of solo videos for y'all. So bear with me. This is definitely super different, but today I'm going to be doing a release roundup for you guys of singles, albums, EPs that have come out since the beginning of the year. It's not a complete list. I'm working on that over on the Obscure Undead website if you're interested. But just a few things that I found interesting or noteworthy. So let's get into it. All right. So first up, if you're looking for something on the indie post-punk side of things, akin to maybe, let's say, Black Marble, who is a band I absolutely adore, is Ball Pit's new 3-track EP, In a Garden, which was released on February 8th. This is a band from Michigan, and their sound is super solid. It's mellow, it has a great beat, a nice balance between electronic and synth elements, and the track that I would absolutely recommend out of these three, even though they're all great, is the track Wet Porcelain. Absolutely lovely. All right, next up is a German band whose name I am struggling to pronounce. I think I've tried 7, 12, 26 times to get this right, but it's Die Verlier, something like that. But they are a German band who recently released a single, Man im Mond, or Man in the Moon in English, for their upcoming self-titled debut album, which I also believe is being released as a cassette on Mangrel Records. But this one single is so catchy. It has great bass, great guitar riffs, this really solid late 70s punk sound with early post-punk vibes. It has melodic kind of sing-shouty vocals like you would expect from that era as well. I'm really looking forward to the full release to get a sense of how the rest of it sounds, because just this one track, fabulous. I'm very excited for this one. All right, next up is Mexican goth band Calvarex with their new single Tecnoctlan, which is a very wonderful minimal goth track. So typical of the Spanish sort of goth style that we're used to, it has a lot of these staccato style vocals underlaid by strong beats. And this one has a really nice twinkling synth beat, which I find particularly compelling. And I'm looking forward to whatever they're going to release this year as well. I can't recall offhand if I saw something for them. Another single that I would like to recommend is also the latest release from Dead Cool. And I really should have put this in my notes. I am failing you guys. This is why you should go check out the list that I am currently working on the Obscure Undead website. You can find it in the links below. I'm restarting the whole releases list project to give myself something to do now that, my meds have kind of started to level me out. Next on the list is Italian darkwave band Shad Shadows and their latest album Prismatic, released on February 4th. It has a minimal synth-heavy kind of modern darkwave sound, especially reminiscent of a lot of the Italian sound that we know. So a lot of new wave influence, some Italo disco, energy influence, strong distinct electronic beat, really great minimal synth melodies, and a lovely mix of femme and mask vocals, with neither overpowering the other, which I find to be very, very rare. But they pull it off super well, and I'm definitely glad for it. Also released at the beginning of February was This Cold Night's latest album, Are We Not Immortal Yet? So this is going to be released on CD and vinyl by Young and Cold Records, which, not a surprise that Young and Cold picked it up. I believe they've worked with the band before. But what was a surprise for me on this one is that the sound is a bit different than what I would have expected. So it has more of a shoegazy sound, and I would have expected something more towards what the last album was going to, more of a post-punky darkwave sound, or possibly going back to the slightly gother sound that they used to have. But one thing that I love about this Cold Night and Chase is the experimentation with style. Really masterful experimentation with style that he does. So we have these more shoegazy guitars. It feels a bit more spacious. It's definitely more mellow. One of the biggest surprises to me on this album, which it's definitely an album full of surprises for me, just knowing their discography, is how minimal the lyrics are. There's a lot of repetition. I'm very much used to a lot of storytelling through the use of more of a narrative in this Cold Night songs, but we don't find that so much on this album. It's a lot of repetition. It is still all very much unified, but it's definitely less lyric heavy. And I definitely want to spend more time digging into the lyrics, because there's Chase M is just Chase M and This Cold Night are just one of my favorites. Up next is Ill Humans with what I believe is their first full-length album, New Light, which was released again at the beginning of February on the 6th. This album is more synth-driven post-punk than their previous single or 2 or 3 track EPs that they've done, particularly Lonely Soulmates, which is, in my personal opinion, their best work prior to this album. That was a 2-track EP, I believe. But it's definitely more synth-driven than previous releases, and more synth-driven, especially than the bassist's previous project, Edo, which was very guitar-driven. So the whole album is wonderfully immersive, and one thing I think is very cool is that Albie of Scary Black contributes guitars on the track The Gardens. So I would really recommend the tracks Dramatica and Ecocide on this album. Ecocide in particular reminds me a lot of Un Hombre Solo or Silent M, with kind of that more, I don't want to say it's synth punk, but kind of more in that sort of synth style. So I am really excited about this album. Next up is an Italian duo, Winter Severity Index, with their 5th release, Disgello, released on Icy Cold Records on February 18th, so just a few days ago at this point. And their sound varies on this album, like it has on all previous releases, between a little bit of post-punk, a little bit of darkwave, some ethereal, very eclectic sound. And this album, I feel, again, like a lot of other albums that we're hearing this year, a lot of other singles, kind of heading more in a synth direction than what you would have expected based on previous releases. And especially after their 2016 release, Human Taxonomy, which for me has been just the pinnacle of their discography up until Disgello. Definitely a shift towards more danceable sort of synth beats. So you still have Simona's clear ethereal vocals, but the synths are more forward. There are more bass beat elements. The album has incorporated some of the styles of, say, like Aunt or Minuit Machine, in terms of just that driving, more sort of death on the dance floor kind of vibe. But I really appreciate that despite the change in sound, despite the experimentation, this is another band that has such a strong grasp on who they are that you know immediately that it's Winter Severity Index when you listen to it. I would really recommend Gold Age / Labyrinths of Memory, which really, really strongly showcases this shift in sound, and also Cause and Effect, which has this wonderfully spacey sound with strong layered rhythms, beautiful husky vocals, and just makes the album seem so huge, just absolutely vast, which, unsurprising, given the last track on the album, which kind of ties the whole thing together thematically. It's called Un Rousseau Pensant, which is referring to the philosophy of the same name of Blaise Pascal, who was a philosopher, an inventor, a mathematician from the 17th century. And Un Rousseau pensant translates to a thinking reed. And essentially that it defines what man is. You know, basically fallible, capable of death, fragile creatures, but with this whole concept of, the noble ability to think. So a reed that bends but does not break is the gist of it. And this is a reading out of some of his work, and it is gorgeous, and I feel like an absolute great sort of end cap to the album. Another Icy Cold Records release is Je T'aime's sophomore album Passive, released February 14th, Valentine's Day, which I guess is appropriate considering that the whole thing is filled with, they're not ballads, but they're definitely more like lovey, broken relationship kind of songs. And I was really excited when I found out that this album was being released, because they released their self-titled back in 2019, and it was positioned right sort of in that rise of post-punk and just really shone among everything else that was being released at the time. So they have really strong new wave and dark wave elements, and Passive continues through with that trend. The bass guitar remains strong. The melodies are still very guitar forward, but the vocalists' sound really sort of encapsulates the direction that they've gone, the direction that they've come. Everything from the songwriting to the delivery to the vocals just feels so much more confident in what they're doing. So when they shift around in style or maybe do something a little bit less expected, it's not sort of tentative as you might have felt on their debut release. It's definitely way more confident feeling. I don't know how you sum that up in something other than subjective feeling, but this album just feels more confident, which is to be expected from a sophomore release. And I will admit, the whole Valentine's Day, February 14th thing and the lyrical content and all of that, I have made no secret about how I find that kind of vibe gag-worthy, because these are tropes that have been just done to death in music, literature, art for, I don't know, the beginning of time. But the way that Je T'aime handles it, it's not that it's a fresh take, but it's new and it's interesting, or it does so with these topics in such a way that I don't immediately go like, love song. Which for me is like a huge tick in the yes column. I'd say mid to late album is where Passive shines, but the tracks I would really recommend are On the Phone, Cold, and Lonely Days. Another album that I'm going to recommend, on the grounds of basically one track, is CinemaScope's release, A Crack in the Wall. So this is an album that is very much the Smiths / The Cure sort of redone with modern equipment, and a lot of it I wouldn't give a second listen to, with the exception of one track on it titled Fall. It is so good. The flow of the song, the pacing, the vocals, the way it intersperses between the vocal styles, so the shifts in a more melodic style to kind of a more high-pitched style, like, I don't know, almost kind of Panic Priesty in vibe. That song alone makes this album worthwhile. So that's definitely one that I would recommend checking out, even if you just kind of skip over the rest of the album. And last on the list is an album that has so far, since the beginning of the year, been my absolute favorite release. So, naturally save it for last. And that is Give My Remains to Broadway, with their debut release, Beyond the Gates of Zauztoth. And the cover for it is kind of silly. It's like a woodblock elder god kind of vibe. But they're a Toronto-based trio, and this is their debut album, and it was released January 5th. It's a dark wave sound kind of in the veins of Twin Tribes, but darker. So you have these really awesome melancholic synth strings and strong dance beats, and the vocalist's deep, brooding voice is very clear, very lovely. And for being a debut album, they have absolutely nailed it. I am very, very impressed with them. They do describe the album as a dark tale of a mortal soul lost to forces of evil and chaos. You know, like half the releases we get, but there's just something so great in their composition, in the vocal melodies and the synth melodies. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And plus, they have this really cool cover of the Misfits' Pet Cemetery. I, I didn't realize it was Pet Cemetery until I was starting to tune into the lyrics on the second time I listened to it. And that's one thing I love about a cover, like a good cover, is when I'm sitting there and I'm just like, wow, this song is great. And then you're like, wait a second, this is a cover. Oh my God, this is a cover. I don't know, I can't rave more about this album. Like I said, if you ever wish that Twin Tribes had a darker sound, go check out Give My Remains to Broadway. And that wraps it up. I don't know how many releases I had on my list. I didn't number them. I didn't count them. They weren't ordered except for that last one. But if you want to look at a list that has more releases from this past year, go check out the link in the description below for the Obscure and Dead website, or just go to obscureanddead.com and look at the releases section. I'm going to be trying to do a short roundup like this every week, with a handful of, new and noteworthy, or at least new and noteworthy to me, of releases from the previous week. And if you like it, please let me know. If there's something you think I could be doing better in my delivery, please let me know, because I've never had to record something on my own before. Usually I bounce off Mouse or a guest, so this is definitely a little weird. But, yeah, I should wrap this up. And that means that I really want to give thanks to everyone who's donated to the show, all of our Patreon supporters who help make this show happen. Because honestly, without the encouragement of you folks, I don't know how I'd get up and out of bed in the morning and actually, sit down, put on a face of makeup and do more than just, ugly cry into my coffee. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but no, you guys make it worthwhile, and I do really appreciate you for that. And I'll have some reviews coming up. If there's anything you'd like to see me review in particular, let me know, put it in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
This